Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Aegon's Executive Board and Supervisory Board, I welcome you to Aegon's 2023 Annual General Meeting of Shareholders. This meeting will be chaired in English. Simultaneous translation into Dutch is offered. Headphones for the simultaneous translation were provided to you when you entered the room and are still available outside this room. For English, please choose Channel 1. For Dutch, please choose Channel 2. I now open the meeting and welcome our shareholders. We're pleased to see you again, and I see many familiar faces here as well. Next to the shareholders who are here in The Hague, we welcome the shareholders who are participating virtually through a live webcast. They also have the possibility to ask questions and to vote in real time during the meeting. To accommodate live voting and keeping in mind the short delay in the webcast, the voting is now opened and will remain open until the last voting item on the agenda. The voting results will therefore be shown at the end of the meeting. Our shareholders have also been able to cast their votes prior to this meeting, either by granting a proxy or by using the e-voting system. Present with me on stage are the following members of the Supervisory Board. Corrine Wortman-Kool, Vice Chair of the Supervisory Board. Ben Noteboom, Chair of the Remuneration Committee. And Caroline Ramsey, Chair of the Audit Committee. I also welcome Dona Young, who is nominated for reappointment as member of the Supervisory Board and who is participating virtually. The other Supervisory Board members attend the meeting in a virtual manner as well. Also present with me on stage are the members of the Executive Board, Lard Friese, Matt Ryder, as well as Bieke de Bruijn, Company Secretary. Furthermore, Joyce Lemreise, our notary from Allen Overy, and Rogier van Adrichem, our external auditor of PwC, are present here in the room. On the front row in the room, the following members of the Management Board are present. Allegra van Heuvel Patrici, Astrid Jekyll, Onno van Klinken, Bas Nieuwe. The other Management Board members are following the AGM through the live webcast. Before we continue, I have a few general remarks. For our shareholders present here in person, please note that audio or video recordings are not allowed throughout the building. For the voting, please note that you can already use the link to the Lumi webpage. In case you experience any difficulties, please notify our staff. Upon registration, you have received a voting card. This card will only be used in the voting webpage and does not work due to technical. The card will only be used if the voting webpage does not work due to technical issues. I'm sorry, just to be clear, you'll only use the card if the voting webpage does not work. Then I established the following. This meeting was convened in accordance with the required formalities. The agenda with explanatory notes and further meeting documents were put on Aegon's corporate website on April 13, 2023. The meeting documentation was also made available for review at Aegon's head office in The Hague. The attendance list of this meeting is currently being drawn up. We will come back later on this point. The final minutes of our previous annual general meeting of shareholders held on May 31, 2022, have been made available as of November 29, 2022, at our head office in The Hague and on Aegon's corporate website. Also, the draft minutes of our extraordinary general meeting of shareholders held on January 17, 2023, have been made available for comments on Aegon's corporate website for 3 months as of April 17, 2023. The final minutes of this meeting will be made available as of July 17, 2023. The minutes of today's meetings will be kept in English by the Company Secretary. The draft minutes of this meeting will be available for comments on the website for 3 months as of August 25, 2023. The final minutes will be available as of November 24, 2023. I wish you all a good and interesting meeting. We will now move to Agenda Item 2, the Annual Report and Annual Accounts of 2022. Lard Friese, Aegon CEO, will give a presentation on the course of business in 2022, including financial results. After the presentation, we will address your questions regarding Agenda Items 2.1 and 2.4. Lard, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bill, and good afternoon, everyone. Dear ladies, dear gentlemen, dear fellow stockholders. 2022 will be remembered as a pivotal year for Aegon and its stakeholders. We made significant progress with the implementation of our strategy, and we delivered on several of our financial targets ahead of schedule. We remained focused on helping our customers navigate a highly volatile economic and geopolitical landscape that has presented significant challenges. It was also a testing time for investors, given the instability in equity and bond markets and uncertainty around inflation expectations. Against this challenging backdrop, we continued to execute our strategic agenda that we first announced at our Capital Markets Day in late 2020. In 2022, we took further steps to deliver on our ambition to be a high-performance company that is a leader in its chosen markets, guided by our purpose of helping people live their best lives. We maintained a high pace in transforming Aegon by optimizing our portfolio of businesses. In October of last year, we took an important step and announced the decision to combine our Dutch pension, life and non-life insurance, banking, and mortgage origination activities with ASR, creating a leader in the Dutch insurance industry. Also, we have exited various businesses that are subscale or active in small or in niche markets. A key example is the divestment of our businesses in Central and Eastern Europe, which have been sold to the Vienna Insurance Group. This transaction is being closed in several stages. The sale of the businesses in Hungary and Turkey was completed in 2022 and allowed us to return 300 million euros to our stockholders and reduce our leverage. We expect to complete the sale of the remaining businesses in Poland and Romania shortly. Furthermore, we created value by reallocating capital from our financial assets to our strategic assets, which are businesses with a greater potential for an attractive return on capital and where we are well positioned for growth. We also made important progress on our operational improvement plan. By further strengthening our balance sheet and improving our risk profile, we delivered on our financial commitments. So please allow me now to provide more details on how we delivered on our improvement plans. In 2020, we began taking steps to transform the company to improve our performance and ensure that we create value for our stakeholders. Through a rigorous company-wide operational improvement plan, initially comprising of over 1,100 initiatives, we introduced new ways of working to improve Aegon's operating performance by reducing cost, by expanding margins, and by growing profitably. While executing on all the initiatives, we embedded a focus on efficiency and operational execution in the organization. And we also established a routine of setting ambitious yet realistic expense savings and growth targets with a clear focus to deliver. All in all, we created a culture of transparency, early escalation, and focus on developing talent to support new ways of working and to build a lasting execution muscle. From a financial perspective, the operational improvement plan already resulted in an operating result uplift of 627 million euros as of year-end 2022. We have therefore outperformed our expectations of achieving a benefit of 550 million euros from the program, not only in numbers, but also 1 year earlier than expected. In October 2022, we announced the agreement to combine our Dutch businesses with ASR, and with that accelerating our strategy of releasing capital from mature businesses and becoming a leader in markets where we are well positioned for growth. Through this transaction, we are creating the number 2 Dutch insurance company. The new combination will lead to substantial synergies and benefits for customers, business partners, employees, and shareholders. We also establish an attractive long-term asset management partnership with ASR, which will strengthen Aegon Asset Management's capabilities in the focus areas. As part of the transaction, we will receive a cash consideration and a 29.99% strategic stake in the company, through which we will benefit from ASR's improved operating capital generation and capital synergies over time. It is our intention to use the cash proceeds for capital return to stockholders and deleveraging consistent with our disciplined capital management approach. In 2022, we realized strong commercial growth in most of our chosen markets. However, we also saw outflows in our asset management business and in the UK retail channel as a result of an uncertain macroeconomic environment. In Spain and Portugal, China and Brazil, as well as in the US, we achieved profitable growth in our life insurance businesses. The workplace channel in the UK recorded the highest level of net deposits in the past 4 years, demonstrating the improvements we are making to our UK franchise. Our commercial results underscore the importance of offering customers a broad range of products. Supported by the commitment of our employees across the company, we will continue to introduce new products, improve the customer experience, and further build on our distribution strengths. We furthermore made good progress maximizing the value of our financial assets. Our active approach to risk and capital management has improved the risk profile of these activities and reduced the volatility of our capital position. Now, as you can see, Transamerica in particular has taken several actions to strengthen its capital position and increase the predictability of its capital ratio. This includes setting up a voluntary reserve for variable annuities, achieving additional long-term care rate increases, and freeing up capital by reinsuring the legacy universal life portfolio of Transamerica Life Bermuda, our Asian high net worth business. Furthermore, the dynamic hedging program, which we expanded in 2021 to include all variable annuity guarantees, continued to perform well in difficult markets during 2022. In line with our strategy, we will continue to maximize the value of our financial assets and use the capital released from these businesses to further accelerate our transformation. The actions that we have taken have supported the financial results that we have achieved since our Capital Markets Day in 2020, because at that time we set the targets for the years 2021 to 2023. Through a rigorous operational improvement plan, we have achieved expense savings which contributed 366 million euros to our operating result in 2022. As mentioned earlier, the overall benefits from the operational improvement plan, from both expense savings and growth initiatives, have exceeded our expectations and 1 year earlier than expected. Now, it goes without saying that were not done, that improving efficiency and driving commercial momentum remains a key focus areas for us going forward. Our free cash flow amounted to 780 million euros in 2022. In the last 2 years combined, we achieved 1.5 billion euros of free cash flow. This means that we have delivered 1 year early on our cumulative free cash flow target of 1.4 to 1.6 billion euros for the period 21 to 23. Our gross financial leverage is in line with the target we set ourselves 2 years ago, and we intend to further reduce our leverage by up to 700 million euros using part of the cash proceeds from the ASR transaction. Our proposal for the final dividend, which is, of course, on the agenda today, brings the total dividend over the year 2022 to 23 euro cents. For the full year 2023, we target a step up to around 30 euro cents per share, which is well above the level we targeted at the 2020 Capital Markets Day. And we also announced a new share buyback program of 200 million euros in February 2023 after having completed last year's 300 million buyback program. On top of all this, we intend to return 1.5 billion euros of the cash proceeds to stockholders once the ASR transaction has closed. This is a testimony of our commitment to offer attractive stockholder returns. Aegon has had a good start to this year. In the first quarter, we demonstrated strong commercial momentum and advanced on our strategic priorities. And I'm especially pleased with our progress in light of the continued global volatility, specifically in financial markets. Our strong balance sheet and our disciplined investment approach put us in a strong position to navigate the current macroeconomic environment and execute further on our strategy. We have significant financial flexibility with strong capital positions in the units and cash capital at the holding near the upper end of the operating range. Additionally, Aegon maintains a conservative and well-diversified fixed income portfolio. Our U.S. corporate bond portfolio is defensively positioned with an overweight to higher rated bonds relative to the benchmark and is diversified across industries. In the Netherlands, as well as in the US, we are invested in mortgages. Now, the Dutch mortgage book is focused on residential housing and has a low loan-to-value ratio and is known for its very low delinquencies, even in unfavorable economic environments. Similarly, the commercial mortgage loan portfolio in the United States has a low loan-to-value ratio of 50%. More than half of the book is invested in multifamily residential properties, and the book has limited near-term maturities. In addition, Aegon owns about 6 billion euro direct real estate in the Netherlands and in the US combined, with just 200 million euros exposure to offices. So let's now move to our sustainability agenda. By the way, the last week when we published our trading update, we gave an appendix, and in that appendix we gave more detail of the quality of our investment portfolio, which is an excerpt of that I just shared with you, but if you're interested, that's where you can find it. Moving to our sustainability agenda. In 2022, we strengthened our governance and our reporting, and we took steps to further embed sustainability in the business and made good progress towards our commitments on climate change and inclusion and diversity. As member of the Net Zero Asset Owner Alliance, we have made a commitment to transition Aegon's investment portfolio to net zero emissions by 2050. We are well on our way towards the intermediate target to reduce the carbon intensity of our corporate fixed income and listed equity general account assets by 25% in 2025 versus the 2019 baseline. Additionally, we have set a target to reduce the carbon footprint of our own operational activities and realize a significant reduction in our carbon emissions. A large part of that reduction is due to changing work practices with more people working from home. And as a result, we have globally reduced quite a lot of footprint, physical footprint, office square meters. We're also making progress on our vision for Aegon to be a fair and inclusive company. We adopted a global inclusion and diversity strategy in 2022, and we appointed a global head of inclusion and diversity and are steadily increasing the number of women in senior leadership positions. We continue to further enhance our sustainability agenda with additional commitments, including, number one, investing $2.5 billion in activities to help mitigate climate change or adapt to the associated impacts by 2025. Number two, by engaging with at least the top 20 corporate carbon emitters in our portfolio by 2025. And number three, continuing the trend of increasing female representation in senior management. Embedding sustainability into our day-to-day activities is a key element of being a high-performance company, and it creates value for all our stakeholders. Now, to wrap it all up, in 2022, we have significantly accelerated our strategy execution. And, equally important, we have delivered on our financial commitments. We created new ways of working at Aegon and are delivering on our sustainability agenda. Looking ahead, we remain fully focused on executing our strategy. We are continuing to improve the performance of the company. We are investing in profitable growth by introducing new products and expanding our distribution footprint. We remain disciplined in our capital and risk management, and we continue to provide attractive returns to our shareholders. Therefore, I am confident in delivering on our financial and strategic commitments for the year 2023 and beyond. Above all, I am very proud of all our colleagues who work hard to make our strategy a success and who continue to support our customers' needs every day. And I look forward to provide more details on our strategy at our Capital Markets Day in London on June the 22nd. Thank you very much. Bill?
Thank you, Lard. Before addressing your questions, I will inform you about the attendance list of this meeting. In this meeting are present 35 holders of common shares and common shares B. They represent, together with shareholders who have voted through the e-voting or via proxy voting, a total of 1,338,324,410 votes. That this number represents 69.15% of the 1,935,434,808 voting shares and of the issued and outstanding capital as at record date of this meeting. We will now address your questions regarding agenda items 2.1 and 2.4, the adoption of the annual accounts 2022. Prior to this meeting, our shareholders were able to ask questions in writing. We received one question in writing prior to this meeting. We will address this question under agenda item 7, any other business. We will first answer the questions from our shareholders present here in the room. Thereafter, we will address questions from our shareholders who are participating virtually. They can ask their questions through the chat function. As this function is open throughout the meeting, I mandated our Head of Investor Relations, Jan-Willem Weidema, to moderate these questions. I invite virtually participating shareholders to enter the questions now, so we can address them immediately after answered the questions from our shareholders in the room. We believe that this approach will ensure a constructive dialogue with all our shareholders. May I now invite shareholders present here to ask their questions. Please go to the nearest microphone and clearly state your name for the minutes. To give all our shareholders the opportunity to ask questions, I will ask you to limit your number of questions or comments to 3 at a time. Questions that cannot be answered during the meeting will be answered afterwards. These questions and answers will be added to the minutes. May I please remind you that questions should be related to the agenda items. You can ask your questions in Dutch if preferred. They will be answered in English with the simultaneous translation into Dutch. I can see I have someone who's ready to start. Please proceed.
Thank you. Goedemiddag, mijn naam is Alexander van der Graaf, particuliere belegger. Ik heb op dit punt 2 vragen. Mijn eerste vraag betreft de waardecreatie die Aegon altijd in het vooruitzicht stelt. Onder waarde versta ik de waarde van het bedrijf. De marktkapitalisatie, de beurswaarde van Aegon dus. Met waardecreatie zou de beurswaarde van Aegon dus naarmate de tijd voortgaat steeds op een hoger niveau komen te liggen. Daar dient nog bij opgemerkt te worden dat dat hogere niveau dan over het algemeen ook vastgehouden wordt. Men kijkt dan al snel uit naar een koers met beduidend hogere pieken, maar dat laatste komt erop neer dat de koers ook overtuigend lagere dalen laat zien. Aegon brengt al jaren de termen lange termijn waardecreatie en of gewoon waardecreatie naar voren in presentaties en jaarverslagen. Ik wil jullie adviseren om deze termen voorlopig niet meer te gebruiken, aangezien jullie jezelf hier inmiddels wel aardig mee voor joker zetten, vind ik. Sorry dat ik het zeg, maar het is helaas wel de realiteit. Het zijn telkens ogenschijnlijk mooie verhalen, maar iemand die kritisch is, prikt er zo doorheen. Zelfs de aankondiging van de verkoop van Aegon Nederland heeft, zo inmiddels blijkt, ook tot niets geleid. Want men zegt altijd dat de beurs vooruitkijkt, maar beleggers zien hier kennelijk niet zo'n geweldige zet in dat het meteen tot wat waarde heeft geleid. Als de deal met ASR werkelijk zo'n goede zet voor Aegon zou zijn, had de koers van Aegon al een veel grotere sprong omhoog gemaakt. Er is al jaren geen sprake van daadwerkelijke waardecreatie bij Aegon. Het is misplaatst dat Aegon deze termen nog steeds blijft gebruiken. Een nederig excuus aan de aandeelhouders vanwege waardevermindering zou mijns inziens meer op zijn plaats zijn. We wachten al jaren op die waardecreatie, maar het komt niet. Ik weet niet wat jullie onder deze termen verstaan. Misschien zijn het voor jullie betekenisloze termen die mooi staan om presentaties en verslagen mee te vullen, maar voor iemand die dit hoort of leest is het inmiddels lachwekkend. Zolang u geen significante waarde creëert, verzoek ik u deze termen achterwege te laten. Ik wil u erop attenderen dat Aegon op dit punt al geruime tijd niet meer serieus te nemen is. Mijn vraag is, geeft u toe dat Aegon ontzettend faalt in het creëren van waarde? Mijn tweede vraag betreft de concrete strategie van Aegon. Ik heb hier op de bijzondere aandeelhoudersvergadering aan het begin van dit jaar ook al kritisch naar gevraagd. Het blijft mij toch enigszins vaag. Aegon heeft sinds de heer Friese CEO is met grote nadruk gecommuniceerd dat Aegon zich hoofdzakelijk richt op 3 landen, te weten Nederland, het Verenigd Koninkrijk en de Verenigde Staten. Dat zijn de kernmarkten, Nederland, het VK en de VS. In het meest recente jaarverslag dat onlangs gepubliceerd is, staat het ook weer. Pagina 18, Core Markets, Nederland, het VK en de VS. Op de bijzondere aandeelhoudersvergadering aan het begin van dit jaar heb ik al aangegeven dat de verkoop van Aegon Nederland mijns inziens niet strookt met de eerder uitgedragen visie. Onlangs kondigde Aegon aan dat er een deel van de activiteiten in het VK verkocht worden. Met een verkoop in Nederland volgt een verkoop in het VK. Dus dat is dus weer een desinvestering in een kernmarkt. Waar wordt in geïnvesteerd wat heel veel rendement op gaat leveren, is dan de vraag. Wat wil Aegon nou precies in de toekomst? Ik hoop, gezien het beroerde koersniveau niet, dat Aegon zich achter de schermen voorbereidt om overgenomen te worden. Wordt Aegon heimelijk rijp gemaakt voor verkoop?
Thank you, Mr. Van der Graaf. Lord, I think these are for you.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Van der Graaf. Let's start with the value creation. So when I started on May 2020, the stock price was €2.08.
Dat was wel een beetje een vertekend beeld. Hè? Dat was echt
No,
wel een
it
dip.
wasn't. I mean, that's the stock price, €2.08. The stock price now is 4.29 or whatever it is
Eigenlijk
today.
is de koers al 15 jaar niets.
That's true. Over the longer time, but I'm just trying to give you some facts. You know, so when I started, the stock started at €2.08. The stock now is 4.29. In the meantime, we have improved the quality of the free cash flows, and as a result, the dividends per share, hopefully it's been, by the way, approved today as well, will go up, and actually faster up than that we had anticipated when we started. The third fact that I can give you is that we also provided additional returns to stockholders in the form of buybacks, the 300 million buyback that we have announced last year, and the 200 million buyback that we have announced a couple of months ago, and we are busy buying those stocks. Now, so those are facts from the last couple of years that I can oversee. What is also a fact is that a stock price, and with that the market capitalization of the company, needs also to be seen in the context of markets. So how are you performing versus peers, right? So because we are one kind of a company, we're not a tech firm, we're not a consumer goods firm, so we need to compare ourselves on how we are doing. And we are doing that, obviously. We're doing that actually on a daily basis. And if you look at the relative performance versus our peers over the last couple of years, you will find that you need to look for the peers, which are, number one, those who are in life insurance, pensions, and in asset management. Our peers are not companies who are in property and casualty, schadeverzekering. Those are not our peers. And if you would make that analysis, you would find that we have been outperforming US peers for quite a bit, and save one or two, but we are in the top quartile of that. And also in the last period, you can see that we've been performing well in line with European peers with a similar business model than we have. So you're not alone. The third element to how the stock price moves is, of course, the market in general. And as you, as an investor, know very well, the market over the last couple of years has been quite volatile, given inflation, given the macroeconomic backdrop, given topical issues like the debt ceiling discussions right now in the US that provide temporary volatility, and the interest rates, of course, which have gone up quite substantially in a very short period of time. All these things are inputs in the way the company is being valued by investors. But the most important input is what management is doing to ensure that the company performs better relative to its peers. Now, when I started in 2020, I made it clear that I agreed with you, and I agree with you, that the company's long-term performance was not what it should be, and that we have launched a program in a number of areas to improve the performance in the longer term. And there were 4 areas. First one was that we said our strategy is not clear, and we should make it clear. And we have. And this goes to your second point. We have said, indeed, that our core markets are the US, the UK, the Netherlands, and that we will focus on Spain and Portugal, China and Brazil, and the global asset management business. And that all the other companies, because we were in 22 markets or something, all these other companies, we would either run very tight capital, meaning that they don't consume a lot of capital, or we would divest them over time, which we have done. The second thing is that we have said we need to perform better from a cost perspective and from a margin perspective. And we have launched an operational improvement program to improve it. We set targets for it, we overachieved it, and in my opening statements, I made that, I gave you an accountability of that, or an account of that. The third element was that we would reduce the risk profile of the company because the company had a lot of volatility in its capital positions, and you will have observed over the last couple of years that every quarter we were able to report very solid, calm capital positions with the operating units above their target ranges, operating ranges, and with the group also in good solvency positions. Free cash flows have increased and are of better quality. The fourth and final element was that we said we need the operating of the model to be tighter, more disciplined, and quicker, and keep a good pace. Also there, I think we've made a lot of progress. So your assessment that the overall performance over a longer period has not been great, I agree with. We have done a lot of work over the last years to start repairing that. I can only conclude that if I look at the scorecard that I keep, that we, versus my peers, etc., that we are on the right track. Now, in order for it to get to levels where you are more happy with, we need to have more time, and we need to do much more work, and there is much more work needed. So that's on the first piece. On strategy, yes, we indeed had this exchange, I think, at the AGM, Mr. Van der Graaf, where you said, look, you're saying that the US, UK, the Netherlands are your core markets, but you've done a deal with ASR and you've sold your Dutch business to ASR. How can it be a core market for you? And now you're adding to that, you just sold the protection business in the UK. That's another core market. So let me respond to that. The first one is about the UK. Let me do that first, because that's a new element of it. In the UK, we are focused on two core business lines. One is retirement plans, pension plans to companies and their staff. We call that the workplace solutions business. That business is growing, and in the fourth quarter of last year, they had the best quarter in 4 years, and also this quarter, which we reported last week, they had continued good momentum. So that business is really starting to grow well. The second line of business is the retail business. That's a platform that we operate where advisors advise their clients on their investment portfolios, and we take those assets on our platform, and for that we take a fee. That is a business which is not done very well yet, and we have conceded already 2 years ago when I started that needs more investments to get right. Another business is the protection business. That is a business which was not selling new product, hardly, and was also not core to our UK team in the UK. So in order to improve their management focus on the two big business lines that they have decided we have decided that on their proposal to divest that book of business to Royal London, which is just increasing their focus on the two business lines that really need to grow. So in my view, it's a portfolio optimization that we did in the UK. Going back to the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, we have done the transaction with ASR. We are still, by the way, but let's say post-closing, we are a 30% owner, nearly 30% owner of a very large, diversified, very strong number 2 insurance group in the Netherlands. That stake represents billions of value for us. We also have asset management activities post-closing in the Netherlands that are still part of our group in the Netherlands. And that asset manager is going to have a long-term partnership with the combined new insurance group. So the Netherlands is indeed core to our group and remains core to our group. The way we extract value in the Netherlands, we are going to do differently. We owned 100% of a business that was smaller. Now we own 30% of a business that is much, much bigger, better diversified, and through integration we can create a lot of value. So the Netherlands will remain to be core to our group.
Thank you, Lard.
Dank u voor uw antwoord. Wil ik nog even terug naar punt 1 en 2.
Ja.
Wat punt 1 betreft, een koersstijging op een hele lage koers is natuurlijk al snel een hoog percentage. Dus stelt het natuurlijk niet veel voor. Dus ik zou toch graag zien dat Aegon die waardecreatie waar Aegon het altijd over heeft, dat ze die een keer toch echt wel goed zichtbaar krijgen. En wat punt 2 betreft had ik ook nog een vraag van waar wordt dan in geïnvesteerd wat een hoog rendement op gaat leveren?
Yes, so we invest in a number of things. We invest a lot in growth, for instance in the United States. In product lines in the United States that we have identified. The life business, the workplace solutions business in the US. And you've seen over the last quarters the growth also coming through. And that requires a lot of investments. Don't forget that when we started, the US was repatriating every year 900 million of cash to the holding company. And we have said, no, that's too much. we need to reinvest in that business. And the level that they're currently at, 550, is the level that is, of course, much lower than the 900 that they did in the past, because we invest in that new business to make it grow, etc., which is now also generating the right returns. That's one example. We also make bolt-on acquisitions, like we did in the US last year. We also invest in the UK business. We invest in our markets in Brazil. We invest in China in order for these markets to grow, and they have.
Okay.
Dank u wel. Ja, ik hoop dat het inderdaad die waardecreatie dan zichtbaar zal maken. En dat we dat in plaats van erover te praten, dat we dat een keer gaan merken dan.
Thank you, Mr.
We will
Roth.
continue the work.
Is someone in two,
Yes,
please?
thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Florien Kits van Heiningen, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Dutch Association for Investors in Sustainable Development. For each year, we engage with Dutch companies on sustainability-related issues, and I would like to thank you for the constructive dialogue prior to this AGM. We have compiled 3 questions relating to biodiversity, lobbying, and labor conditions. My first question relates to biodiversity. It's positive to see that Aegon is aware of the increasing importance of biodiversity. For example, Aegon the Netherlands has signed the Finance for Biodiversity Pledge. At the same time, Aegon has announced its merger that it will merge its Dutch operations with ASR. Since only Aegon the Netherlands has signed the Finance for Biodiversity Pledge, VBDO wonders if the biodiversity ambitions of Aegon after the transaction with ASR will be as ambitious as they are now, especially since Aegon will be more active in markets that are generally less focused on sustainability topics, such as the US. VBDO understands that the challenges that come along with operating in markets that are less focused on sustainability topics, but we also believe that Aegon can and should be a sustainability frontrunner in those markets. Therefore, VBDO has the following questions. Is Aegon willing to commit to the Finance for Biodiversity Pledge? And second of all, which steps will Aegon take to ensure that group-wide the sustainability strategy of Aegon will not lose its pace? Then my second question relates to labor conditions. The trade union CMV has shared its concerns about the merger of ASR and Aegon the Netherlands with Dutch newspapers. It is not clear yet how many employees will lose of ASR and Aegon will lose their jobs. But since ASR states that the combination will save costs, CMV deems it likely that there will be layoffs. How will Aegon ensure the position of its employees is well taken care of? And then my third question, which relates to lobbying. This is a new theme that we introduced as engagement theme. We find it very positive that Aegon is already reporting on the costs of its political advocacy, and it's also engaging with policymakers in the EU and USA. We are also pleased that the lobby objectives are focused on addressing climate change. However, we could not find information about Aegon's lobby activities through industry associations. And as a result, we are not able to determine to what extent the objectives of Aegon are in line with material sustainability objectives, such as the Paris Agreement. Studies have shown that around 89% of industry associations do not always lobby in line with the Paris Agreement. Therefore, a real risk exists that Aegon, perhaps unintentionally, is supporting unsustainable lobby practices, even in the absence of concrete evidence of such practices. Therefore, my final question is Aegon, during the coming year, willing to disclose a detailed overview of the lobby activities of its aligned industry associations and to engage with those associations that do not lobby in line with the Paris Agreement? Thank you.
Thank you. Clear questions. Lord?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for your questions. Let me start by the last one.
Yes.
You're the lobbying. So we have no objection to disclosing what associations memberships we have. But we cannot guarantee that we can give you an exhaustive list of all lobby activities conducted by all these associations for whom we are a member. We also believe that there is a difference between what you can call real economy companies and financial services companies, if I may make the difference that way. Real economy companies like companies that are, for instance, heavily emitting industries, etc. We are a financial services company. We do have a footprint. We're working hard to bring that back, but it is a very different kind of exposure. So I think for those kind of companies that are heavily emitting, it may be make more sense to hold that company account for membership of associations that do not lobby in line with the Paris agreements. I could imagine that for financial services companies like ours, that will be less relevant. Again, no objection to disclosing the memberships, but an exhaustive list, I cannot guarantee that we will be able to do so. Then on your second question, this is around our employees in the context of the transaction with ASR. Well, first of all, we have not closed that transaction, so until such time as we've closed it, nothing will change for our employees. Everything remains as is. After closing, under the leadership of Jos Baeten and his team at ASR, the integration will start. The integration of the activities aims at maximizing the potential that the company create by putting the activities together and fully benefit from its scale and reach. First of all, that integration process is led by ASR, so I cannot, I don't know their plans for that, and you should ask it there, I think. But in general, I can say that the integration process is expected to take a number of years. This is not something that's done in a very short period of time. And ASR has publicly stated that I cannot exclude that the integration will also lead to redundancies. They cannot exclude it. But at the same time, ASR has also said details of the integration needs to be worked out, works councils need to be asked advice over this, etc. So that will happen on a step-by-step basis. And I think we also need to point out that the integration efforts and the potential loss of jobs is mitigated by a number of things. First of all, that ASR and Aegon the Netherlands are very complementary in many business lines. So while there are overlap in some business lines, there's also a lot of complementary nature of these business lines that will mitigate it. And also, both companies have currently quite a number of vacancies. This is quite a tight labor market, so that will also help to mitigate this risk. And then there is time. Time always helps, because natural attrition is always a helpful dynamic here to ensure that this can be done in a mitigated manner. Now, in the long run, we believe that the combination of this company is actually good for jobs, because it's a well-positioned company that will be very strong, and as a result, for the future, will be sustainably a very attractive employer. Then your first question, yes. To take them from last to first, on biodiversity. As you have noticed, and Aegon has no specific biodiversity commitments, and we also have no plans to make those additional commitments on the topic. Doesn't mean we don't find it important, but we have chosen to focus on priority themes of how we can play our part, and that's climate change and inclusion and diversity. We recognize there is a great deal of crossover, of course, because if you talk climate change, biodiversity, protecting the environment, these are all elements, of course, that are hanging together. And Aegon Asset Management, for instance, and Bas is the CEO there, is present here, is part of a collaborative engagement initiative, such as actually your initiative that you're leading on mining and biodiversity. And we also engage with companies on the topic of biodiversity through the active engagement, active ownership philosophy that we have with the companies we invest in. So with that, I think I have answered your question.
Yeah, well...
Or was one sub-question, maybe?
Yeah, mainly which steps you will take to ensure that the...
That was it.
Okay.
Thank you very much. That's very much. Yeah, we believe that... So this was, by the way, the question, what steps we will take to ensure that a group-wide the sustainable strategy of Aegon will not lose its pace, yeah. And certainly not in the context of the transaction that we discussed. Now, first of all, we believe that Aegon, that the combination that we create will be very well positioned for the future to extend the role in the Dutch insurance market when it comes to ESG and sustainability. ASR is a company with a very clear commitment in that area, and therefore we believe that the combination will also continue its pace there. At a group level, Our sustainability approach remains the same, also post that transaction. We have carried out a review of our commitments that we've made in the context of the disentanglement, and we have assessed that there will not be a significant impact on our ability to deliver on the commitments that we have made.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentleman number one, please.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Mr. Ratif, private investor in Aegon. I have the following question regarding the annual integrated report 2022, page 216, regarding other charges. Other charges are related to settlements. In 2022, I read in the annual report that there are settlements, but this time in 2022, I only see that the United States is mentioned. If we go to the annual report of 2021, we also see that there is a discussion about other charges which took place, like settlements in the US, but also in Europe. So my question is, what has changed in 2022 report that the Netherlands is not mentioned, or maybe I read it wrong, I don't know. And this comes also to the following point, because I follow the annual reports since a couple of years. Oftentimes, this is related to, for example, in the US in the past, there have been made settlements with 99% of policy holders, and sometimes with 1% of the policy holders there were special settlements, or it took longer. In the Netherlands, there have been also settlements. And I would like to discuss the following, because in 2022, in the annual report, you mentioned that you, Aegon, have settled, for example, in some settlements for 90% with the Sprint Plan investors. And you repeat that actually from the previous year. So my question is, what has happened there regarding those settlements? And also, what can we expect from settlements for the future? Because when we look into the annual report, we see there the other charges. The numbers are going up here. Sometimes they remain very low. But in the end, if you open a report, then yeah, the other charges, the numbers are growing then. So my question is, what can we expect there? And when it comes to the settlements, for example, what I know is that you mentioned in the report that you talk like you have made settlements with 90%, but there is also information that there is a lot of cases which we believe it can never be 90%. So could you maybe explain more about how many settlements you have made over the last years with, for example, the Sprint Plan gedupeerde, for example. So yeah, I would like to address this question. And I also would like to say that I think it would be fair for Aegon to settle in the right way also with people who have invested in the past with Aegon, and not give them some pocket change, like 750 euros, if they have lost money by investing actually in an investment fund, which later looked like it was just like a loan, and they paid it off. They paid interest instead of a monthly payment. So my question in the end is, what kind of other charges can we expect, and what can, because this is really important, because I'm a stock holder, I think that it's not clear in the annual report with the 90%, is that, how has that been done? Secondly, you also mentioned that in the year 2021, you made an agreement with 90% of the investors, although a large group, they got after that date, they were asked to settle, and they have not settled at all yet. So my question is the annual report really reflecting the reality?
Okay, thank you very much. That was more than 3 questions, I think, so but we'll make sure, I just say that because we want to make sure that we answer all those. Matt?
Yes, maybe I can take your first one on page 216 of the annual report. We are generally talking about settlements of lawsuits that have come our way as a consequence of what we call monthly deduction rate increases on life insurance contracts in the United States. These are increases generally to cost of insurance charges on existing life insurance contracts that we are allowed to make under the terms of the contract. However, in some cases, we've been the subject of a class action lawsuit by policyholders who have thought we had applied let's say the mechanism that we applied to make those rate increases was inappropriate. And in these cases, for example, we make a general class action settlement with that group. There are people that opt out of that settlement, and then we deal with those let's say on an individual basis or an institutional basis. So these things can be lumpy, but maybe to go to your last comment about are the annual accounts a fair reflection of what our liabilities are, the answer is yes, because if we were able to size the amount of the claim and assess a probability that we would have to pay the claim, then we would be putting it as a provision in the accounts. But in many cases, we cannot do that. We cannot do that. In terms of your question about what can we expect going forward, what can we would never make comments about what can we expect going forward. We are always in active negotiations in these things. If we could make a provision for it, we would. But in general, we can't.
Good.
I would like to comment to that because sometimes in every year we see that, especially in 2019 financial report, then you use the word resurface, yeah? So something resurfaces. That means that people come together and will start a class action suit. So then the report says, well, we were able to deflect it, the Dutch court judge did dismiss it, and then later in 2022 we read again that, yeah, well, we had to make settlements and we had to pay them out. So of course, you have a lot of products out there which are sometimes for multiple explanations, or how do you say that? Voor meerdere uitleg vatbaar. How do I say that in English? It is explainable often in multiple different ways. So I hope you guys don't lose the overview, because what for us it's important as investors that that we don't end up always with a lot of settlements, because it's out there in the news all the time, and Aegon is known there now that there are a lot of lawsuits and cases where people try to get their money back. So how is this for us as investors? How can we trust you that we get good value? Like our colleague behind me says, we want to see that the stock goes to 10 euros and not stays around 4 euros. So please comment to that.
Okay. last comment, and then we'll move.
Yes, I think so. So, with respect to having an overview of the various litigation, settlement activity, and so on, please do rest assured that that is our responsibility to indeed have that overview, and our dear auditor friends would, I think, agree with that one. So we do have that. We do have that overview. Thank you.
Okay. Please.
Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Kine. I speak on behalf of VEB. I want to go back to the first shareholder who asked questions, Mr. van der Graaf, who asked some questions about strategy, the performance, and so on. And actually, I recognize a lot of his words, but he presented them in a very polite way. I recognize some of those words in early years, like I've been criticizing Aegon. Having said that, also I think I said it last year, I think there's a higher sense of urgency within Aegon at this very moment. So there's more reason for optimism than just a couple of years ago. So let me start with that. Having said that as well, I've got some very interesting questions, which I'm sure Mr. Friese will love.
3,
about the
right? No
strategy.
more than 3.
No, well, I've got plenty of, I also got questions about, to the auditor.
Okay,
Is that also
but
this
that,
agenda point?
no, next point. We'll do that
Okay.
later. So
Good.
3 points, please.
Good. It is related to the strategy. I think I understand it. You make choices, you focus, efficiency, returns, and so on and so on. I'm wondering what is so interesting about China. I would have understood it 2 or 3 years ago, but in the meantime, we've become more, but less relaxed about China. That is not just opportunity, but at some point, we may not be able to do any business there anymore. So is it wise to consider that as a main growth market for Aegon? A similar question I can ask about Brazil. Brazil is in continuous political turmoil. There's maybe half a year of stability, and then there's a big issue with the government. So is it so wise to consider that as a key market for Aegon? That's my second question. Third question relates to the asset management. I remember last year that Mr. Friese was very positive about the asset management, 1 trillion euros, which Aegon is managing either directly or indirectly, or having it managed. And Aegon is not so afraid that a big portion of those 1 trillion will be managed by competitors. Instead, you want to increase your share of those assets that you're managing or you're having it managed for your customers. I was wondering how it's progressing. Last year, between 35–40%, 1 trillion you're managing yourself. The rest is competition is doing it, better or cheaper. Have you progressed a lot? Because at the same time, I'm seeing that your operating profit in asset management has dropped a lot. Actually, a lot more than the markets have dropped. So can you explain if I should be worried about that? Those are my comments or my questions about the strategy or the performance. And later on, I'll come back with the questions to your auditor. Thanks.
We'll wait for those. Thank you. Lard?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Keiner. Geopolitical risk is up, unfortunately. We have in our backyard a massive war, a horrific situation, and we see growing tensions and especially the relationship between China and the US is, of course, a very big concern. China is, as we all know, a vast country with a huge amount of population where there has been, until recent years, a very strong economic growth. Hence, a very attractive potential opportunity for us to further our businesses and grow and take the benefits of a growing market, a growing middle class, a more prosperous country that over time needs more advice, more demand for life insurance products, and also more money to be managed in the form of asset management. And we have seen our 2 joint ventures that we have there. One business is a life insurance business, selling traditional life insurance products to retail households. And the other one, a separate company, is an asset management company, which we have, both companies we have in joint ventures with local partners. Their trajectory has been strong over the last years. And I would argue the asset management business has done it better in the last years than the life insurance business. The reason for that is that in the life insurance space, there has been a lot of regulatory change in China, which has hit the entire industry and has temporarily lowered the demand for those products. We are now seeing in the first quarter that the demand is picking up, also post the reopening of China after the COVID pandemic. Now, the geopolitical risk is there, and we are acutely aware of it, and therefore we are cautious in the way we operate in China. The good news is that the partners that we have, especially on the asset management side, is a very strong and well-respected partner, and we have seen continued growth in the asset management area, which is good. The life insurance side, the growth has been more choppy due to the points that I made early on it. So in China, we are acutely aware of the geopolitical risk, of other risks associated with, let's say, on many different fronts, which we, in China interiorly, so we are acutely aware of it. But at the same time, we are there with strong partners. There is a growing middle class, a massive population, and a lot of opportunity to capture for us. But tread cautiously. On Brazil, it is, in our view, slightly different. In Brazil, we have already seen with our partner for the last 12 years, continuous double-digit growth in the development of the business. Through a combination of good product innovation and build out of distribution channels. For instance, 2 years ago, we launched a joint venture partnership with one of the largest banks there, which has helped to propel the business forward. Now, the geopolitical risk is obviously also in that market present. However, please note that we are following that acutely, but please note that the change in the top leadership of, let's say, that country does not necessarily mean that the infrastructure and the political dynamics in the provinces and in parliament have fundamentally shifted. Not much, quite frankly. So in that sense, for us, the environment remains conducive. It is an economy that is growing. We have a very strong and good partner there, and our business has continued to demonstrate resilience and growth. So we're very pleased with that. Finally, your point on asset management. Yes, the asset management results over 2022 were not good. The asset manager was not alone in that. The entire industry has been suffering from the overall macroeconomic backdrop. Our asset manager has relatively, in its product mix and in its investment mandates, a higher percentage in fixed income asset classes. Given the rate rises that we have seen, the rises in interest rates, we have seen those bond values coming down. And as a result, the fees that we gain are on the back of the values of the assets. Now, the values of the assets have come down. As a result, our fees have come down as well. And that goes straight to the bottom line. So indeed, you have seen, number one, that effect at the asset manager. The second effect is that we've also seen in China that the performance fees that were outperformances of the Chinese asset manager the year before were not returning to the same extent in 2022. That was an add-on effect to it. So I concur with you that the asset management business last year had a tough year. We are addressing it in two ways. The first one is we are implementing a new technology platform globally for the asset management business, which will allow us, post that implementation, which we aim to close in the course of this year, post that implementation to increase our efficiency and improve our margins. That's number one. Number two, we are focusing the asset management business more on those strategies that are allowing us for protecting the fee levels, and also those are strategies that we're really good at and have a competitive edge in versus others. So real assets, private debt, alternative fixed income strategies is what we go for, and responsible investments, and those are the areas that we go for. Now, as to the percentage that our asset manager takes from the overall money that needs to be managed, I would say it's been relatively stable. It has not grown much. So we still have that dynamic, that opportunity there. We will never be all things to all people, so do not expect us to take a materially larger share of that. But we do believe there's still areas where we can grow our share of that wallet.
Good, thank you. Any other questions in the room? Yes, sir?
De naam is Dekker, meneer de voorzitter. Ik spreek als miniatuuraandeelhouder uitsluitend voor mezelf. 3 vragen. Allereerst wil ik opmerken dat ik erg tevreden ben over het feit dat na een aantal toch nogal complexe jaren er bij Aegon gekozen is voor een adequate stroomlijning van de organisatie en naar mijn gevoel in ieder geval het duidelijk terugdringen van de aanwezige risico's. Dus daar ben ik heel gelukkig mee. Het is natuurlijk wel een onderneming die nog te maken heeft met, laat ik maar zeggen, naweeën uit een soms ver verleden. En dat moeten we ons natuurlijk voorshands blijven realiseren. Ik heb daar 3 vragen bij. De eerste is, ligt een aanzien van de closing van de ASR-overeenkomst het tijdschema nog zoals het voorspeld was? En op welk moment verwacht u dat die closing daadwerkelijk zal zijn en daaraan is gekoppeld? De tweede vraag, en die begin ik met een misschien wat merkwaardig statement. Ik hanteerde als argument waarom ik vele jaren lang geen aandeelhouder van Aegon wilde zijn een wat dubieus zinnetje. En dat dubieuze zinnetje dat luidde, wie winst zaait zal storm oogsten. En dan mag u zich afvragen of u storm met een kleine of met een hoofdletter schrijft. Maar dat brengt mij toch op een detailpunt. De inschatting van die problemen en het feit dat Aegon nooit zo erg willig is geweest om tot schikkingen te komen, speelt daar natuurlijk een rol. Maar de vraag is, nu die situatie nog steeds niet geheel overzien kan worden, gaan die claims deels of geheel, de claimprocedures zal ik maar zeggen, deels of geheel mee voor wat Nederland betreft in de overeenkomst met de ASR, of blijft al dat gebeuren achter bij Aegon? Dus dat is een heel feitelijke vraag, niet ingaande op de wenselijkheid of onwenselijkheid dat die claims nog steeds niet geschikt zijn. Mijn derde vraag is, nu een aantal risicomitigerende maatregelen is genomen, hebt u het gevoel dat u bij Transamerica begint te staan waar u graag zou willen komen? Of denkt u dat daar toch nog belangrijke risicomitigerende maatregelen wenselijk of noodzakelijk zijn? En kunt u iets zeggen over uw exposuregevoel, nu het rentebeeld in de Verenigde Staten natuurlijk in snel tempo veranderd is? En dat hoeft natuurlijk op zich voor een bedrijf als Aegon, CQ Transamerica, niet ongunstig te zijn. Maar ik kan wel moeilijk inschatten wat die rente-effecten zijn. Op korte termijn kunnen die heel vervelend zijn. Het gaat niet om de hoogte van de rente, maar de mutatie van de rente heeft natuurlijk nogal wat problemen gegeven. Daar hebben we ook wat banken op zien sneven, helaas.
Yeah. Thank you for those questions. Lard, you want to take those?
Dank u wel, meneer Dekker. Thank you very much, meneer Dekker. To start with the last piece, interest rates up are good for Aegon, are good for Transamerica, because our products will become more attractive to our customers, and the guarantees that we gave to our customers and options in the back book of our portfolio and the capital that we need to hold for that, you know, if you discount the liabilities against a higher interest rate, they weigh less on the balance sheet. So that is good news for us. But you are very right that if interest rates rise very quickly, that there is not an immediate effect that you are seeing in the P&L, if you will, or in your returns, and that you also need to use a lot of the cash flow that you have to manage liquidity risk in your company. The good news is that we have, of course, been tested on that in 2022 as interest rates in the US, but also in Europe have very quickly increased from nearly 0 to more than 5 in the US and more than 3 in Europe. And at all times, we've been able to manage the liquidity demands for our hedging portfolios and our derivative portfolios, for instance, very, very well. So in that sense, that is good. We believe that the improvement of the higher interest rates will become more visible in our financial results over time. So first, when interest rates stabilize at a higher level, and then over time, you will see that coming through, because the money that we get in, we need to reinvest that against higher rates, and that is positive for us as a company. When it comes to Transamerica's risk profile, we have changed a lot in that risk profile by introducing and broadening a hedge strategy around our variable annuity book, which has provided already a number of quarters of very high hedge effectiveness, more than 97%, and which has calmed down the entire financial profile of the company. And the same goes for the volatility of the capital positions. You can just look at the capital positions that we reported over the last year and a half, and you will see that in spite of all the volatility, it's been a very calm picture. And that is, I think, proof testament to all the underlying risk mitigation that we have taken. And we will continue, Mr. Decker, to mitigate further where we can and where we find opportunity, because we believe that predictability and quality of cash flows, as that increases, it will help the valuation of the company. When it comes to closing of the ASR transaction, we have said at the time that we aim to close the transaction with our regulators in the second half of this year, and we still maintain that view. The second half is a wide range. It can be Christmas, it can be summer. Let's hope that it's more to the earlier end than the later end, but we are progressing very well and working very hard with our regulators and with ASR to do that. Then where it pertains to legal risk, I think my colleague, Matt Ryder, has shared some of that in his comments on the earlier question. You know, some of these cases take longer, as we know, and we are disclosing that in our annual report. We have been able to resolve many of them, a lot of them, but some cases are still under litigation because we have a different view than the people who are litigating us, and that just needs to go through the legal process. And those processes can take a lot of time, as you know, depending on the jurisdiction, but depending on the workload that many of the legal magistrates have. So we just have to await the outcome of those, and we are disclosing that adequately and well in our annual report on where that stands.
The question was whether those liabilities will go on to ASR.
And they will, yeah, so Aegon the Netherlands, any claims or rights for policyholders are with Aegon the Netherlands and its subsidiaries. That legal entity that moves to ASR, but it does not change the rights of our policyholders that they have, so that they have vis-à-vis ASR in that sense. In the business combination agreement, we have provided some reps and warranties around that, but the main thrust of it is that all the policyholder rights and their liability and the liabilities we have for them moves to the new owner.
Good. Any other question in the room? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Rowers, a private investor. A question around the annual report. Rowers, yeah. Annual report. Quite a big report, 450 pages, up 50 pages from last year.
It's full disclosure.
Why is it so big? Can there be anything done to make it more concise?
Oh,
or
we
is
wish.
it also a reflection of internal complexity?
We discuss this in the Supervisory Board all the time, believe me. Matt, you want to answer that one?
I wish that would be the case. We have to produce and read and analyze all those 450 pages, and that is a giant task. However, it is likely, with the introduction of IFRS 9 and 17 in 2023, that I'm sorry to say the disclosure will get even more robust, shall we say. So we look forward to, well, at least we're only printing 150 copies of the thing now. You can get it online, but it is likely to actually increase in size, given the complexity of the disclosure.
Okay. Do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Or?
I have a follow-up question for Lard Friese. So you took over work from another CEO who left something behind for you. So are you satisfied with the results of the settlements which have been made over the last 2 years in regards of that the company is able to get a better reputation here? Okay. That's my question.
All right.
Because there are still a lot of people I know who have not a good resolution. So, and it continues, And as I said, I think I have not received a real good answer from Matt, because as I repeat here on page 216.
We got the question.
Yeah, there is nothing said about the Netherlands here, about the settlements in the annual report. So
Okay.
that is not finished, I believe.
Okay.
We have, in the Netherlands, we've had a number of issues that we've addressed over time in different ways. And we were able to mitigate a lot and to resolve a lot, which I'm very pleased with. There's still, by the way, not done by me necessarily, because it's been a long period, as you know. So I think we can be pleased with that. At the same time, we still have difference of agreement with a number of people and a number of our clients, unfortunately. And unfortunately, in some of these cases, they are still being discussed in court. I cannot go into these individual cases as you would expect, but I'm happy and pleased to see that we've been able over the years to mitigate a lot of these complaints and to be able to bring them to a proper resolution. But unfortunately, we still have disagreements with some of our clients, and in some cases these are being litigated, and that has to go through the court process and will lead to an outcome that we need to await. If I look at the overall reputation of Aegon in general, we operate in multiple markets, so and we also do not use the Aegon brand in every market. In the US, we are called Transamerica, for instance. But I would say that our reputation has increased over the years, and I think, you know, the way we run the company, the way we ensure we bring our purpose to life, and if we do that continuously for a long period of time, it will have no doubt a positive effect on the overall reputation of the firm.
Okay. Any other question in the room? I'm sorry, did you have another question? Yeah, but that comes later. That comes later. Don't worry, you'll have your chance. I'm looking at the moderator. Anything else? Good. Okay, thank you. We now move to agenda item 2.2. The Chair of the Remuneration Committee, Ben Notenboom, will present the 2022 Remuneration Report. Ben, please proceed.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Bill. Ladies and gentlemen, before we ask you to cast your advisory vote on the 2022 Remuneration Report, I would like to share a summary of what was disclosed in the 2022 report and answer your questions. The remuneration policy that applied to the Supervisory Board members in 2022 was approved by our shareholders, you, in 2020. There were no deviations from this policy in 2022. As announced last year, the Supervisory Board has decided, in line with our policy, to index the base fee, attendance fees and travel fees with 5% as of 2022. These fees are not indexed automatically, and this was the first update since 2019. The increase of these fees, as well as an increase in the number of meetings and travel movements, resulted in a higher total remuneration level compared to last year. Similar to the Supervisory Board, the remuneration policy that applied to the Executive Board members in 2022 was approved by the shareholders in 2020. There were no deviations from this policy in 2022. For the 2022 performance year, Lard Friese was allocated €1,559,000 in fixed compensation and €3.6 million in total compensation. Matt Ryder was allocated €988,000 in fixed and €2.3 million in total compensation. In accordance with the Executive Board remuneration policy, the fixed compensation levels of Mr. Friese and Mr. Ryder have been increased by 5% as of January 2023. These increases will keep both aligned with internal and external compensation levels, economic developments like inflation, and changes to the compensation of other senior managers in the Netherlands. The variable compensation of our Executive Board members for 2022 was based on a mix of business and individual performance results. Aegon's overall business performance result was 113% on a performance scale, with 100% as target and 150% as a max. This result was driven by strong results on several indicators, as were already shared by Lot, such as free cash flows, addressable expense savings, and the execution of the transformation program. Converted to the performance scale that applied to our executive board members, the Aegon business performance result of 113% resulted in a score of 85% for the executive board. You can see this on the first line of the table. This result has 70% weight in the calculation of their total variable compensation. The other 30% was based on individual performance results. As you can see in the other lines in the table, this was measured by performance indicators related to the development of the strategic roadmap, the execution of capital initiatives in line with the strategic roadmap, sustainability, integration and execution, the proportion of women in senior management positions, and format finance strategy execution. Based on a total result of 88%, Lard Friese was allocated 1,368,000 euros in variable compensation. Matt Ryder, based on a total result of 85%, was allocated 837,000 euros in variable compensation. A third of these amounts has been paid in cash, while 2/3 will be paid in Aegon shares after a deferral period of 3 years. That concludes my summary of the remuneration. Back to you, Bill.
Thank you, Ben. We will now address the questions regarding agenda item 2.2. Any questions in the room? I'm looking at the moderator. Any questions from the chat? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, just on this point, please note that agenda item 2.2 about the remuneration report 2022 is subject to an advisory vote. Ladies and gentlemen, prior to this meeting, our shareholders have been able to cast their votes either by granting a proxy or using the e-voting system. Furthermore, the option to vote live during the meeting is enabled. Let me briefly explain how you can vote via the app. The voting app displays the options for, against, and withheld. After having voted, the display will show your vote. If you want to change your vote, you can do so until the voting is closed. For our shareholders in the room, if you have questions about the voting app, please raise your hand and someone will assist you. The voting results will be shown at the end of the meeting, before the last agenda item, any other business. We now move to agenda item 2.3. Matt Ryder will give an explanation of Aegon's dividend policy. Matt, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bill. We've decided to transition to a cash-only dividend as from the 2022 final dividend, and have therefore updated our dividend policy accordingly. This decision was made for several reasons. First, it removes the need to buy back shares to neutralize the dilutive effect of the stock dividend. Second, it provides more room to execute the planned share buyback in relation to the ASR transaction, and to ensure that these capital distributions to shareholders are done in a tax-efficient manner. The remainder of the dividend policy and our approach to returning capital to shareholders remain unchanged. We are committed to paying a sustainable dividend to shareholders, which can grow over time if Aegon's performance so allows. That is evidenced by the increase in our dividends from 0.17 per common share over the financial year 2021 to the 0.23 per common share over the financial year 2022 we are proposing today. We are targeting a dividend of around 0.30 per common share over 2023, barring unforeseen circumstances and subject to shareholder approval at next year's annual general meeting. Back to you, Bill.
Thank you, Matt. We will now address questions regarding agenda item 2.3. Are there any questions in the room? I would like to ask the moderator, any questions? Good, so we can continue. We now move to agenda item 2.4, the adoption of the annual accounts 2022. We already discussed the financials of 2022 and the related questions. I therefore now would like to ask Roger van Adrichem, our independent auditor from PwC, to make a few comments. Please note that Aegon has released PwC from the obligation to observe confidentiality to allow them to comment on the audit of and the auditor's report on the financial statements of Aegon NV. Roger, the floor is yours. You'll get the food afterwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, dear shareholders. I'm happy to provide you with some insights into our 2022 audit of Aegon's financial statements. And I would like to use this opportunity today to provide you with the comfort that we have performed a robust and independent audit. Just to give you an idea, we spent roughly 200,000 audit hours reviewing the quarters and auditing Aegon's consolidated financial statements. 2022 was a challenging year in which the increase of interest rate and the inflation impacted Aegon's equity, income statement and collateral position. A year in which Aegon signed a business combination agreement with ASR to combine the business of Aegon Netherlands and ASR, and the last year of IFRS 4 turning into IFRS 17 from the 1st of January 2023 onwards. Now both two events deal with ASR as well as IFRS 17 are disclosed in the financial statements and described in our key audit matters. But before I explain our key audit matters and our conclusions around the internal controls and other matters, let me first start with the outcome of our audit. So we issued an unqualified audit opinion on the consolidated financial statements dated March 15. And that means that these financial statements give a true and fair view of the financial position of Aegon as at 31 December 2022. But it also means that the integrated annual report of Aegon contains all information required by law. Now let me go to the key audit matters. And a key audit matter is the matter which is most important, which we have identified in our work during the year. And these matters often include critical accounting estimates and management judgment. I will highlight the following 4 key audit matters. The first of all is the impact of the agreement between Aegon and ASR, already mentioned earlier in this meeting. They're given the impact of the agreement on the disclosures of rights and obligations, but also on the classification as held for sale and the significance of the impairment, at 1.8 billion. We determined this as a key audit matter. Now, management has determined that in Q4 of 2022, Aegon is committed to a sale involving the future loss of the control of Aegon Netherlands, and that qualifies for held for sale. Now, based on our own assessment, we concur that the disposal of Aegon Netherlands met the criteria for held for sale classification in Q4 2022. We tested management calculations of the impairment loss, and we found the calculation of the impairment loss as well as the disclosures to be appropriate. The second key audit I would like to highlight is the valuation of certain assets and liabilities arising from insurance contracts. Now, the assets and liabilities arising from insurance contracts are the deferred policy acquisition cost, the value of business acquired, VOBA, the insurance contracts liability, that's the 190 billion, and then the embedded derivatives in insurance contracts. Now, the valuation of these items involves the use of valuation models that use judgmental inputs and assumptions. Think of assumptions around mortality, morbidity, future expenses, surrender, lapse, utilization rates, and own credit spread. Now, in note 34, you can find the sensitivities of these inputs on equity and net income. We involved our actuarial and valuation specialists to test the models, process, the inputs and the assumptions. And we concluded that the valuations are within a range we consider acceptable based on our own industry experience. Well balanced was our point in the range. The third key audit I would like to highlight is the valuation of certain level 3 investments. Just for clarity purposes, a level 3 investment is an investment without observable independent references. Now, in the investments for general account of 131 billion, roughly 2.9 billion of investments are categorized as level 3. And that's primarily debt securities and investments in Dutch real estate. We developed our independent valuation for these level 3 investments, and we considered that the Aegon valuation of these investments was within the bandwidth that we consider acceptable, actually on the prudent side of the bandwidth. And then the last key other matter, and that's around the disclosure of the estimated impact of IFRS 17 and IFRS 9. Now, as I said, from the 1st of January 2023, both IFRS 17 and IFRS 9 has become actually effective for the annual reporting. Now, as the adoption of both standards have a significant impact on IFRS equity, Aegon provided in note 2.1 their best estimate of the impact. Now, please note that Aegon stated that the impact on the opening balance sheet is indicative and can be subject to change. But based on all the procedures we have performed, as we have outlined in our key order matter, we found the estimated impact on group reported equity to be reasonable and that the disclosure note was appropriate. Then let me go further and tell you a little bit about the internal controls around financial reporting and the work we did. So management explains in their integrated annual report the design of their internal control system and confirms in their in-control statement that the financial reporting does not contain any material inaccuracies. Now, we have audited Aegon's internal controls over financial reporting as of 31 December 2022. And in our opinion, Aegon maintained, in all material respects, effective internal controls over financial reporting as of that date. We did not notice any material weaknesses in Aegon's control environment around financial reporting. Then let me touch on climate risk and the way we have approached it in our audit assessment. Now, Aegon worked with Ortec Finance to conduct an extensive and systematic climate risk assessment for its general and separate account assets across all business units. Now, modeling results continue to indicate that Aegon's general account portfolio remains resilient against key systemic climate risk drivers across all modeled climate scenarios over a 40 years horizon. And this is the asset side. We considered the impact on the 2022 financial statements resulting from the risk of climate change on the insurance activities limited, due to, among others, the relative limited size and nature of the property and casualty portfolio of Aegon. It's a primarily life insurance business. Now, as the investment portfolio is largely valued at market value, the risk of climate change on this portfolio does also not lead to a material risk from a financial statement perspective. Then the last topic I would like to address, and that's about our approach towards fraud risk and going concern. On the request of stakeholders, we summarized in our report our audit approach towards the risk of fraud and the applied going concern assumption. We identified as potential fraud risk the risk of management override of controls. And based on our audit work done, as we have described in detail in our report, we did not notice any indications of fraud potentially resulting in material misstatements. Management prepared the consolidated financial statements on the assumption that the group is a going concern and that it will continue its operations for the foreseeable future. And we reviewed management going concern assessment, where it included all relevant information. We evaluated the adequacy of the solvency position and free cash flows, and we evaluated the stress testing of liquidity and capital requirements. Our procedures performed did not result in outcomes contradicting management's assumptions and judgments. Now, with that, I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and I'm of course happy to take any questions relating to our audit of the financial statements. But before that, I will now give the floor back to the chairman.
Thank you, Roger. Questions with respect to the annual accounts 2022 have already been addressed. Let me check if there are any additional questions, and I know there's certainly one here. Please proceed.
Yeah, my name is Kine on behalf of VEB. It's very difficult for outsiders to judge, to interpret the numbers that a company like Aegon is presenting. It's not you to blame, it's a very complicated business. So therefore we have to rely on the competence of the management teams and all the thousands of people working within Aegon. We have to rely on the competence of the Supervisory Board, especially the Audit Committee, and certainly in last instance, certainly we have to rely on the competence of the external auditor. And I'm sure that also the management team and the Supervisory Board rely also. So that's, of course, we all try to make sure that the data which are presented to us are indeed realistic and no major mistakes are happening. Now, we've established the importance of your role. Now I'll come back to some questions I'm having. First, to how much we can rely on the risk management, because insurance is about risk management, how strong your risk management structures are, and afterwards how strong PwC is in order to judge how strong these risk management approaches are really sure that we can rely on the data. Now, first thing, I recently read that there are some issues, there have been some issues for a longer period with the Dutch National Bank according to KNAP. KNAP is not very relevant or important number-wise. But how is it possible that for a longer period these kind of structural risk management issues have been occurring in one company, and then lots and lots of business units you're having, lots and lots of daughter companies that you have? How can we be sure that not similar issues appear in more relevant business units or more relevant companies, daughter companies that Aegon is having? Because if there are risk management issues in some of the larger parts of Aegon, that will have an impact on the numbers. So how can we rely that your risk management is indeed up to speed in every single part of Aegon? The first question, and I'm really interested how PwC sees this and whether they've detected the issues themselves and have been warning you, listen, you have to do something. Also, the Dutch National Bank is following you. Second thing, that has to do with China. A couple of weeks ago, I read in the Financial Times that the PCAOB, for those who don't know, it is something like a worldwide organization of accountants. All the big accountants companies are a member of or listen to. It's a very knowledgeable organization who tend to communicate in a very diplomatic way, and they said literally the following. The Chinese arms of KPMG and PwC, those audits in China carry unacceptable number of flaws. In normal words, it's a crappy check of the books in China. So I was wondering, what have you done, what has PwC done to make sure that the numbers you're getting and you're consolidating from your joint venture in China, a very important part, as we just discovered today as well, that we can rely on those numbers? Have you asked help from Deloitte, for instance? Did you go yourself into China? Were you allowed to get access to all the data, and so on and so on? So I was wondering how you're going to mitigate the kind of fundamental flaws that your representative in China appears to be having in doing the audit. So those are my two, I think, very fundamental questions.
I just to make sure I have got it right, between the questions that you're asking are the ones that are directed to Aegon's management and which ones are addressed to the auditor?
Both questions are at least directed towards the auditor. The first question is related to both you and the auditor.
Okay, so should we allow him to respond to the auditor points, and then we can then deal with risk management? Okay. Roger, you want to deal with this?
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you for your question. Let me take first the question about regulation. You mentioned the example of KNAP, and indeed KNAP from a group perspective is not material at all. However, as you know, we as auditors do need to apply what we call the ISA 250 requirements. And the ISA 250 requirements means that we need to make sure that we have a good understanding of the regulation relevant for the organization, and that regulation is adopted. You need to split it into two things. One is the regulation which have a direct impact in the financial statements, being IFRS, tax law. That's of course what we audit, and you can see our opinion on those kind of elements in the audit opinion. The second element is the element around indirect regulation. Indirect regulation is regulation around anti-money laundering, in the case of KNAP, where you talk about credit risk management, that's more indirect, has not a direct impact to the financial statement. For that, of course, we take a good look. We have discussions with management. We make sure that we understand that management will do everything possible to adhere to those regulations. It's not audited, but it is what we look into. Do you know the rules? Do you adhere it? Is there a good process in place? Is there reporting? And that's included in our audit. And that's also included in the audit for all the components relevant to the group audit. So that is the way we audit indirect regulation.
Do you agree with me that those indirect things in the end will and very often do have an impact directly with some delay? So if your internal control mechanisms are not right, for instance, you do not make sure that you invoice your customers in time, or you collect the invoices in time, that at some point you have to take the hit and you do feel the pain maybe 1 or 2 years later. So those indirect things are not for luxury. In the end, they will often have a financial impact with some delay. Do you agree with that, or do I misunderstand that?
No, but I agree that you need to adhere to law and regulation, because that will have potentially an impact later on. And then you end up in the provisioning cycle, which was just one of the other questions. If you talk about controls around revenue recognition, the ones you just mentioned, that's not indirect, that's direct.
Okay, that's
and I just mentioned you that we audit the internal controls around the financial reporting, which includes revenue recognition, and that we issue an unqualified opinion on the internal controls.
As far as the more indirect elements, which I fear at some point may have an impact, at least with some delay, if you see that in some daughter companies or some business units there are some potential issues in there, should we be afraid as shareholders that those things may appear also in the larger, more relevant business units, or are you sure that we don't need to worry about them? I don't care about KNAP at all, actually.
So I just want to make sure your question is
Can we
that
trust
because
that
we...
the relevant business units, that the direct, but especially also the indirect controls, regulations and so on, that the organization is well managed and the risk management is under control? That's my key question.
Okay, well, the auditors can provide a view, and we will respond in terms of the management. But go ahead, Roger.
So for me, the answer on your question is we do not audit the indirect regulations. We evaluate, we discuss it. There's no audit opinion on it. So if you ask me to give you comfort, audit comfort, I can't give you.
Okay, that's clear.
It is not in scope of an audit for the financial statements.
Okay, so maybe in terms of responding to your question, management?
So thank you very much for your question, Mr. Keiner. First of all, the situation around KNAP, obviously not comfortable. We were not happy with it, and let me give you a bit of facts around that. In December 2019, DNB issued concerns around the controls and risk management for a particular credit book that had to do with credits that were originated through lending platforms in a number of markets. What we have done is two things. One, since 2019, the team has worked on remedying those risks and those controls. We have not increased the book. We have started to divest the book. The book came from a end of year 2019 1.5 billion number to today 250 million, which is less than 2% of the balance sheet of the bank. None of the loans none of that book has been loss-making and has been sold at a loss, so there have been no financial ramifications of it. Now, let's say, obviously, the concerns we've tried to remedy in the company, the concerns that DNB had, they were also to a certain extent around, for instance, the ability to have controls around the documentation on those loans that were generated at the time that they were generated. So that has led to quite some discussion, which we have disclosed in our annual reports from KNAP over the years, and recently that came out and led to some news flow that you're referring to. Was that good? No, that was not good. Have we tried to amend it? Yes, we've amended it now. Has it led to financial implications? No, because the books were good, the loans were good. We have divested them over time, by the way. That's on KNAP itself. Then your general question about so risk management frameworks and can risks happen. We have an elaborate risk management practice throughout our company, where we look at many risk types: financial risk management, compliance risk, operational risk, and a raft of risk management types that we are looking at. It is being led, by the way, by our CRO, Dr. Jekyll. The practice is a intense practice in which our regular reports, regular audits, regular second line and third line views that are being done on a regular scheduled basis, and they are being reported out to the board of the company, but also overseen by the risk committee of the supervisory board in quite some detail. Next to that, there's of course the internal audit of the control environment that we have, which is done through our internal audit practice that we have, and of course in close consultation with our external auditor. So we believe that we have a very mature and very extensive risk management practice that we continuously evaluate and rigorously control with the right checks and balances. And we have, on the back of that, many discussions, which are regular, by the way, and normal, with all our local supervisors to make sure that also they are properly informed about our risk management practice. That's how it works.
Okay, and then there was a specific point regarding China.
Correct. Well, I can easily answer that question. First of all, China, the business in China, the joint venture business in China is not part of, let's say, the scope of the full group. It's in that sense that minor that we don't need to focus that specifically on it. And the main items, US, UK, the Netherlands, will bring in at least more than 90% of coverage. Having said that, those are joint ventures. And the joint ventures are audited by EY and KPMG in China.
I'm sorry, if that is the answer, I'm not feeling more comfortable right now, in contrary. So I would hope that especially a country like China, and especially because this is a joint venture, and especially because it is difficult to do audits there, and that we can rely on those, and especially since this is a growth area for Aegon, that will be a very big reason for me to be very close to the matter and making sure that this is an opportunity for Aegon, but also a potential liability. So this doesn't make me feel very comfortable, to be honest.
Matt, you want to respond to that?
I can.
I mean, you give a response. I mean, okay, Roger.
I mean, as I said, if you look at the business size of China, it's rather limited. So we talk about here the consolidated financial statements and the impact on the consolidated financial statement of the two joint ventures. And that is very limited. Secondly, it doesn't mean that we don't do any work. So we instruct, in this case, the asset management business in Hong Kong. We review the file, we have discussions with the auditors, etc., etc. We take the responsibility of the work which is performed there based on the oversight we do, the review of the work they do, the reporting they do to us. So that is covered in the oversight we take as the group auditors. It's not that it is a very sizable business.
Yeah, but let me warn you indeed. There are lots of companies. Let me take another company. Let's take Philips. Philips got a business unit less than 10% of its yearly revenue. The issues with this 10% has ensured that the share price dropped by 70%. And the previous CEO said, well, most of the business is doing very well. Don't worry about it. Well, we do worry. This could end the company if we're not careful. The same thing here. You may sell maybe for, I don't know, for 500 million euros life insurance policies. But in the end, if colleagues of this Mr. arrive after 5 years, say, a liability, you sold something which is not true. We want to be compensated because you cheated upon us. In the end, you may end up with a bigger liability than the business has ever been. So the fact that so far it's just a few percentage points of your total business is not good enough reason for me to say, well, for the time we don't worry about China. So I'm not relaxed at all.
I don't think that's what he's saying either, but Matt?
Maybe, yes, maybe I can add to this, because this is not just an audit issue, yes. It's small enough so that it is outside the scope of the group audit, and indeed you have KPMG and E&Y do the audit of that joint venture. But coming back to risk management, that's where we are involved. We are very close to China, so we have done asset credit quality deep dives there, product reviews. That's all part of the group, let's say, oversight of that business. So just because it's small, we do recognize that, if they start doing strange things, then it could be very impactful for us. That's why we do tend to have quite a strong risk management oversight of the joint ventures, yeah?
I think this is an important point, because this is why I was trying to clarify who you're asking your question to. There's the role that the auditor plays in terms of what is their scope, and there's what is the role that management has in terms of the overall risk framework and management. The fact that it is, that you've pointed out that China, and in terms of the scope, does not mean that it's not important or relevant. As a matter, and let me finish, please. And the fact that and this is a key point from the Supervisory Board's perspective, both on the audit and the risk committee, is the oversight over the joint ventures, not only China, but all the ones that we have around the world, for exactly the points you raised. But we have someone else who's waiting.
Yeah, but I think this, I'm sorry, I think this is important enough. I've started the questions recognizing the important role of the management, the extremely important role of you as a supervisory board, and the last role of the auditor. Now, what you're saying, don't worry, the auditor is not really that much focused on China. You still have us.
I
business
didn't.
is so
Sorry.
complex. Well, that's at least what I understood
No,
from your
I'm sorry,
words.
but please don't. If I may say, with all due respect, don't put words in my mouth. What I'm not saying is that. I'm trying to differentiate what questions you're asking the auditor, what questions you're asking us as management bodies. He's given a response that's not to be interpreted that it is not of top importance and relevance. It's two different things, all right?
I recognize that.
Okay, so that the point is that the concerns that you have are shared and focused by the management bodies, both the Supervisory Board and the management.
There's one thing where we disagree. I agree that the management board is looking into it, which you do. I agree that you're looking into it as a supervisory board. I disagree that this seems to have, for the time being, a lower priority for the auditor. There where we disagree.
Okay.
Yeah,
Final
but
comment,
please, one thing to add from my end, if you don't mind. I understand where you're coming from. Two things, though. I want to underscore that what our auditor was just saying is that the KPMG and EY are auditing firms that are on that, so he works with them, for instance, as well. These are joint ventures. We don't control them 100%, so they also have their own auditing firms auditing the numbers. And of course, but here should I think you said that already. Yeah. You're talking with and working with them. That's one thing. And secondly, indeed, like the joint ventures in Brazil and China are of course getting a huge amount of attention on all risk types from management. We have also teams overseeing those joint ventures, being part of the boards of the joint ventures, and taking active participation in many risk areas that are there that we know are there, and as a result, we're on top of it.
Okay. And maybe just the last point. These entities are being audited by reputable firms. What he's saying is that it's just not this auditor, but they are being audited and monitored from a third party, from a third line of defense as well. Okay. Sorry. Next question.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I've almost forgotten what I wanted to ask, but that could maybe actually a good thing for Aegon. But actually, I know it. I have a question for the auditor. So I understand that every word in the annual report has been audited either by PwC or by AY, correct?
No. So the financial statements are audited by us. The board, the report of the board of directors, supervisory board is, we have read it and made sure that that is aligned with the financial statements. It's not audited.
So you have not audited then the text then technically from time
From
to
the
time?
board of directors?
No.
It's the audit is related to the financial statements.
Yes. But who has then audited the text then?
I mean, if you mean the text,
being
the text,
yeah.
the report of
the words.
board of directors,
Yes.
what we do is we read the text, we understand it. We make sure that if there are items incorrect based on the work we have done as an auditor, we make that correct, but we don't audit it.
No. So if my question is, from this document here, on June 4, 2021, Aegon and Lease Process BV announced that it has finalized its agreement to settle these claims in September 2021. The parties announced that more than 90% of the customers had agreed to a settlement by which the last remaining threshold was met. So do you think it's realistic as an auditor that you can find in a very short time 90% agrees to a settlement? Do you think as an auditor that if you read that, if that is realistic?
Well, I think it's whether it's
You can
factually...
answer
it's-
with a yes or a no.
It's whether it's factually correct or not.
I mean, if you go back to provisioning, so what is the provision level needed? What we do as the auditors, first of all, we look, is it possible to estimate any potential liability? And secondly, how much is the chance that you need to pay out those cash? That's what we audit. And that's based on, if that's happened, then of course the provision needs to be taken. If there is a rather remoter risk, you will find it as a disclosure note in the financial statements, and that is audited by us.
Yeah. Because you are the financial auditor, I understand also you not the tax, so you have seen the numbers, so you can then say a yes or a no that you believe that 90% of these claims have been handled.
Yeah, based on the knowledge we have a good understanding, based on the knowledge we gained from the audit, we have looked to those texts and we have said, okay, well, this, based on our knowledge, is not materially incorrect.
But you have seen the financials then to pay it out.
The financials has been audited.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
One thing, the 90% was the acceptance level. The 90% was the acceptance level. Just and the second thing is you're quoting 2021, I think. Huh?
You guys copy it every time. So this year it's the same text as
But
last
it happened
year.
in 2021. Yeah.
Yeah, 2021, 2022. So I expect this also that this will be coming back in 2024, 2023 then, a report.
Hard to judge.
In 2021, this was the 90% acceptance rate of
Yeah.
the settlement was done. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is this text will come back next year
It
again.
will not, hopefully it will not come back in the Aegon text.
Ah, okay.
In the
good.
ASR.
Well, then next time I will ask again the same questions.
Okay. Any other question in the room? Any other question? I'm looking at the moderator from the chats. Good, thank you. Thank you, Roger.
Yeah.
We now move to agenda item 2.5, the approval of the final dividend 2022. This is a voting item. As indicated in the annual report 2022, we propose a final 2022 dividend of 0.12 euro cents per common share and 0.003 euro cents per common share B, in line with the group's dividend policy, which we addressed under agenda point 2.3 of this meeting and can be found on the corporate website. If approved, and in combination with the interim dividend paid over the final half of 2022, Aegon's total dividend over 2022 will amount to 23 euro cents per common share and 0.575 euro cents per common share B. We will now address the questions regarding agenda item 2.5. Are there any questions regarding 2.5? Looking at the moderator. Good. Thank you. We now move to agenda item 3, the release from liability. We will start with agenda item 3.1. We propose that the executive board members be released from liability for their duties to the extent the exercise of such duties is reflected in the annual report 2022 or has otherwise been disclosed to shareholders prior to the adoption of the annual accounts 2022. You now have the opportunity to ask questions about agenda item 3.1. Any questions? Thank you. We will now move to agenda item 3.2. we propose that the Supervisory Board members be released from liability for their duties to the extent the exercise of such duties is reflected in the Annual Report 2022 or has otherwise been disclosed to shareholders prior to the adoption of the Annual Accounts 2022. We will now address the questions from our shareholders with respect to Agenda Item 3.2. Good, thank you. Let me remind you that Agenda Items 3.1 and 3.2, the release from liability, are voting items. We now move to Agenda Item 4.1, the proposal to appoint Ernst & Young Accountants as independent auditors for the annual accounts of 2024 through 2028. This recommendation is the result of a rigorous tender process that Aegon concluded in line with industry best practice and consistent with its sound corporate governance principles. For further details, I refer to Annex 2 of the agenda for this meeting. Are there any questions? Thank you. We will now move on to Agenda Item 5, the composition of the Supervisory Board. We propose to reappoint Dona Young as member of the Supervisory Board for a term of 2 years, so until the end of the AGM to be held in 2025. We propose to reappoint Dona Young for a 4th term, consisting of 2 years because of the construction and active way in which she contributes as a member of the board and as chair of the Risk Committee. Her Risk Committee experience has been considered as a strength in allowing her to include a strong risk-based perspective on many key topics. Furthermore, her extensive knowledge of the organization, her substantial board experience, and her expertise in the insurance and asset management industry provide great value and continuity to the Supervisory Board. For more information regarding Ms. Young's availability in the agenda is available in Annex 3. We will now address any questions you may have regarding this point. Yes, sir?
Alexander van der Graaf, particuliere belegger. Ja, de Raad van Commissarissen en mevrouw Dona Young. Ik ben hier 2 jaar geleden ook al kritisch over geweest. Dat mevrouw Young wederom herbenoemd wordt, vind ik op zijn zachtst gezegd niet bepaald vernieuwend. Ik vind het zelfs ongepast. Krijgen we volgend jaar weer zo'nzelfde schijnvertoning met mevrouw Wortman-Kool. De officiële termijnen van deze mensen zitten er al lang op. Extra verlenging is onwenselijk. Wat ik zou willen zeggen tegen de Raad van Commissarissen is vernieuw. Het is niet zo dat de Raad van Commissarissen geen betere kandidaat heeft kunnen vinden. Er is gewoon niet naar gezocht. Ze laten iemand zitten omdat ze die goed kennen en het lekker makkelijk is. Vooraf wordt ook dit agendapunt afgestemd met de grote aandeelhouders en het is geregeld. Het wordt echter tijd dat aandeelhouders hier eens tegenin gaan. Dit is immers niet in het belang van de aandeelhouders. Integendeel, zie het verleden. Mevrouw Young is al sinds 2013 lid van de Raad van Commissarissen en daarmee het langstzittende lid van de Raad van Commissarissen. Ze zit er al 10 jaar in. In die periode is er niets van het creëren van aandeelhouderswaarde terechtgekomen en ik heb in het verleden ook wel eens opgemerkt dat de Raad van Commissarissen, mijn inziens, jarenlang veel te passief is geweest. Mevrouw Young is van de oude garde. Zij had mijns inziens al lang vervangen moeten worden. Wat heeft zij toegevoegd in het afgelopen decennium? Een van de taken van de Raad van Commissarissen is toezien dat de Raad van Bestuur aandeelhouderswaarde probeert te creëren. Iets wat bij Aegon al jaren totaal niet lukt. Jarenlang zaten de leden van de Raad van Commissarissen erbij en keken ernaar. Mevrouw Young was daar onderdeel van. Wij als aandeelhouders hebben geen behoefte aan ons kent ons in de Raad van Commissarissen. We willen geen ja-knikkende meelopers die zo lang mogelijk in deze functie willen blijven hangen om zo lang mogelijk deze extra bezoldiging op te strijken. Wij hebben niets aan vriendjespolitiek in de Raad van Commissarissen. Er is vernieuwing nodig, vers bloed. Er moeten kritische personen bij die iets voor ons willen en kunnen betekenen. Gezien het verleden heb ik weinig vertrouwen in de oude garde van de Raad van Commissarissen van Aegon en het lijkt mij beter als de langstzittende leden van de Raad van Commissarissen zo spoedig mogelijk plaatsmaken voor nieuwe mensen, mits die uiteraard actief en kritisch zijn. Ik vind het een zeer slechte zaak dat mevrouw Young nu toch weer voorgedragen wordt voor wederom een extra verlenging. Waarom gebeurt dit? dit is niet in het belang van Aegon.
Okay. So just 2 points here. First of all, under Dutch corporate governance, you can have 3 terms of 4 years. The third term goes down for 2 + 2, and therefore we are fully compliant with Dutch corporate governance. So just to be very clear here in the starting point. Point 2, one of the points that has been addressed and raised certainly by the CEO in his discussion is the huge progress made in terms of the whole risk management to de-risk the company, to make it a much more predictable company in terms of result. Dona Young has had a key role to play in this, as a role in terms of chair of the risk committee. She has deep knowledge and understanding of this business. She also has expertise in terms of other insurance companies, which gives, from her previous experience, it is extremely valuable. Third point, it is not she who is requesting to stay. It is I who am asking her to stay, because I value her contribution, her expertise, her constructiveness, and the very positive way that she can provide good, sound advice to management, which is valued by the management, as well as her colleagues in the Supervisory Board. So I understand that and then my last point is, if you look in terms of the last 5 years, there have been many new board members coming in. The composition has changed. So there has been new members coming in, new blood, new challenges, which is continued part of the process. Yes?
Yeah, my name is Keenan. I speak on behalf of VB. I only partially share the previous comments. What I do not share or do not know, how good or how bad Mrs. Young has been performing, I do not know. And also support indeed your last comment. Aegon seems to have got the corner, indeed, that you're getting more focus in the organization. Step by step, more value is being created, and hopefully results will be shown in a few years. It will take several years before results can be demonstrated to us. So I'm more lenient in that respect. I'm less lenient on your interpretation as far as corporate governance is concerned. The corporate governance code these days is very clear. Standard is 2 times 4 years, and that's it. In exceptional situations where there have been very, very good special reasons, you can extend twice for 2 years. We had this discussion last year with Mrs. Wortmann-Kool, exceptional circumstances. I'm afraid that next year we'll have again exceptional circumstances. Not everything is exceptional. I think in the meantime, you've got a new management board. I think a new strategy is being developed step by step, is being implemented as well. I think there's no compelling reason for existing supervisory board members to stay beyond the 8 years. I don't think there are compelling reasons. We disagree on that. That's very obvious. Could it be that you've been trying to find candidates, but no candidates were yet available or willing to perform this role? Have you searched at all? Or were you already determined from the beginning, no, we want to continue until the end?
So, to answer your question, first, 2 comments. First of all, the company is going through huge change. The ASR transaction, if you look at the number of meetings that we had, from the Supervisory Board's perspective, has been an enormous amount of meetings, additional meetings, to make sure and to work with management and to supervise management in terms of that process. And that will continue, so that the company is going through major change. I think it's fair to say. So exceptional circumstances, this isn't steady state, everything, nothing changes year by year in the case of Aegon. The second point is, as chair of the nomination committee, I am constantly in the lookout for quality talent to join the supervisory board. It's one of my top missions to do that. I'm always there. It's not that I wake up and say, oh, today I have to do something new. It is part of my regular process, constantly engaging. What I'm looking for is a board that is complementary with different skill sets that allow us to perform our function.
And we don't disagree on that
And-
at all.
and so
if there's
therefore-
someone who's really advocating all the time the importance of your role, it has been VEB, it has been myself as well. I think very often there were supervisory board members, maybe at different companies, who were underappreciating the relevance of their own role. So you don't need to educate me on your importance.
My point
Having
is,
said that, it's not that you've decided yesterday we have to change things. This is a process which has been started even on the previous CEO, which means you've had a number of years to find appropriate candidates who could have been complementary. So it's not as of today that you're saying, oh, we need to find somebody, but it was still in a turmoil. You've had plenty of time to find very good candidates.
And we do.
So
And we do.
why extending the term of somebody who's been in this role for another for 10 years. I just don't understand it. It seems indeed that you've been reacting instead of anticipating that something needs to be happening.
I'll be very clear. I, starting with my role, I highly value her judgment and contribution. It is I, and I stress, and I take full accountability, it is I who've asked her to continue. Okay?
Meneer Connolly, het is wel de makkelijkste weg natuurlijk en weinig vernieuwend.
Okay. Duly noted. Any other questions, comments on this point? Good, thank you. We'll continue. We now move on to agenda item 6. We will now address the cancellation, authorization to issue, and authorization to acquire shares. Let me begin to briefly cover all 4 proposals of item 6 before taking your questions. The first proposal regards the cancellation of common shares and common shares B repurchased by the company in connection with your share buyback programs. A description of this proposal can be found on page 4 of the agenda of this meeting. Secondly, we propose that you authorize the Executive Board to issue common shares with or without preemption rights, which is described on page 5 of the agenda. This resolution is similar to and will replace the authorization granted to the Board in 2022. Thirdly, it is proposed that the shareholders authorize the Executive Board to issue common shares in connection with a rights issue. The proposal is described on page 5 of the agenda. These authorizations are limited to 25% of the issued capital and may only be used to safeguard or conserve the capital position of the company. The rights issues will be conducted in line with market practice, offering eligible existing shareholders the right to subscribe for the new shares in proportion to their shareholding to prevent dilution. Upon adoption, this resolution will replace the similar authorization granted in 2022. And finally, we propose that the shareholders authorize the Executive Board to acquire shares in the company. This proposal is described on page 6 of the agenda. Upon adoption, this resolution will replace the authorization granted at the 2022 AGM. While Dutch law allows a repurchase of shares to a maximum of 50% of the company's capital, it is proposed to limit this authorization to 30%. This percentage is higher than the one granted in previous years to facilitate the intended 1.5 billion euro capital return to shareholders that is anticipated to be executed after closing of the transaction with ASR, barring unforeseen circumstances. Aegon intends to cancel the shares that will be acquired as part of this capital return. We will now address the questions for the agenda items 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, and 6.4. Are there any questions? Good, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, item 6 was the last voting item on the agenda. Within a few moments, we will close the live voting. Please submit your votes now if you have not already done so. The voting is now closed. Within a few moments, we will show the voting results for the agenda items. Bieke, could you please read out the voting results for each agenda item?
Will do. With respect to agenda item 2.2, the advisory vote on the remuneration report, 96.99% has voted in favor of the resolution, 3.01% against. Agenda item 2.4, the adoption of the annual accounts. 99.94% has voted in favor of the resolution, 0.06% against. Then agenda item 2.5, the adoption of the final dividend. 99.53% has voted in favor of the resolution, 0.47% against. Then we continue with agenda item 3.1, the release from liability for the Executive Board. 98.72% has voted in favor of the resolution, 1.28% against. Agenda item 3.2, release from liability for the members of the Supervisory Board. 98.71% has voted in favor of the resolution, 1.29% against. Agenda item 4.1, the appointment of Ernst & Young. 99.89% in favor of the resolution, 0.11% against. Agenda item 5.1, the reappointment of Dona Young. 99.04% has voted in favor of the resolution, 0.96% against. Then agenda item 6.1, the cancellation of common shares. 99.9% has voted in favor of the resolution, 0.10% against. Agenda item 6.2, the authorization to issue common shares. 97.15% in favor, 2.85% against. Agenda item 6.3, the authorization to issue shares in connection with a rights issue. 98.36% in favor of the resolution, 1.46% against. And finally, 1.64%, thank you, Ben, against. And then finally, agenda item 6.4, the authorization to acquire shares in the company. 85.54% in favor of the resolution, 14.46% against. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Beaker. Thank you, Beaker. I now establish that the meeting has voted in favor of the Remuneration Report 2022, discussed Aegon's dividend policy, adopted the annual accounts 2022, and approved the final dividend over 2022. Furthermore, I establish that the meeting has released the members of the Executive Board and Supervisory Board for their duties performed during 2022. I establish that the meeting has appointed Ernst & Young Accountants as independent auditors for the annual accounts of 2024 through 2028. Also, I establish that the meeting has reappointed Dona Young as member of the Supervisory Board. Lastly, I establish that the meeting resolved to cancel common shares and common shares B, and that the meeting authorized the Executive Board to issue common shares with or without preemption rights, to issue shares in connection with the rights issue, and to acquire shares in the company. We now move on to agenda item 7, any other business. Before we come to the conclusion of the meeting, I would like to ask the questions. Are there any further questions? And we do have one. So we do have one from Mr., I'm sorry, just before you go there, Mr. Schondenbroek. So I'll paraphrase it, or would you like to raise it yourself, sir? He asked before. So.
Ja, mijn vraag is gerelateerd aan wat wat de Executive Board doet in het toezicht houden op het uitkerend beleggingspensioen, een van de producten van Aegon. Dat presteert al jarenlang middelmatig tot slecht. Afgelopen jaren erg slecht. Daarmee duperen ze een heleboel mensen die pensioen hebben. Wat doet u eraan om hierin te grijpen? En bent u ook zich bewust van deze slechte performance?
Lard?
Yeah, Mr. Schoonbeek, Mr. Schoonbeek, thank you very much for your question. I am aware of your concern as we discussed it prior to the meeting, and I find it very unfortunate. Now, in general, about what we are doing to make sure that our products are appropriately developed and launched, etc., is a couple of things. We have, to start with, a process called PARP. The acronym is the Product Approval and Review Process, which is a very elaborate process where each product, before its launch, needs to go through in order to assess the product's qualities, whether it addresses a need in the market, whether the product is constructed in the right way, whether it adheres to all the rules and regulations, et cetera, et cetera. So there are, and this is one process. Then we have our risk management processes, and we have the general business performance management processes around that as well. So in our company, we have around product and around the commercial activities of the company an elaborate system in place to ensure that what we launch in the marketplace is not only well controlled, but also valuable for customers and is let's say, risk managed as well. Now, where it pertains to the particular category of product that you are referring to, het uitkerend beleggingspensioen product, I do realize that this is a product that that you are continuing to maintain the pot of money that is being invested while you're taking part of that as your pension every month in the course of the years. Last year, 2022, was a bad investment year. And especially for, depending of course on where the money is being invested in, but if it was, for instance, in a lot of fixed income investments, that given the sharp rise in rates, the performance has not been good. Because there is market risk, and that market risk is reflected in the investment of their portfolio. Now, I can't go into your specific case, or that unfortunately I don't have all the details.
But
we are
overall supervision of these people that do the investments is just bad. And also this year, it's again bad. It's far below market.
I can only, first of all, I'm sorry that you're disappointed, right? 2022 did not come out with good investment results. However, the market was also quite bad in that respect. And as we discussed the questions on the asset management business in general, I've also put that in the context of ourselves, our own experience. When it comes to overseeing the product development process and making sure that things have been done in an appropriate manner, we continuously evaluate it because there is a product approval and review process, so you review it regularly as well. And what I can do here is make sure that we pay appropriate attention to this particular area, which I know our team is doing at this moment. And when it comes to your particular case, I suggest that we discuss that with the persons relevant in your particular case. But in general, we do take action to see what's happening here and if we can do more and better and beyond what we have done. Because the market reality is also there. And I think that's another area that we need to accept, unfortunately.
I appreciate that you look into it. And there are thousands of people. It's not only me, but it's also a potential risk for the company, I think.
Okay, understood.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, Kino on behalf of VB. On page 7, you indicated, you write, that selling the Dutch business to ASR concludes the first part of your transition, your transformation as the new Aegon. I was wondering, what are stages 2 and 3?
It's even a chapter, Mr. Keiner. The first chapter, we've said now, the first chapter is a chapter of a book. And then the question, of course, underlying this is, how big is that book? Well, it's not Le Petit Prince, which is a relatively short book. It is more Lord of the Rings, I would say. So I expect many chapters to come to transform the company in a manner that we sustainably build a strong business in the chosen markets with high quality cash flows. And if we do that well and over time, then I hope to be at one moment here where Mr. De Graaf is saying, I now see it happening, which is really what I hope we can do. But the next chapter is something that we will explain in more detail at our Capital Markets Day event, for which you're all kindly, for which you're all kindly invited. We are working very hard at the moment to make sure that we are prepared for that event. You're all invited there. You need to take a ticket to go to London. But you can also follow the webcast, by the way, on that day, and I kindly invite you to do so, at which we will disclose the next leg of our journey.
Okay, let me then put it in a different way. I do not expect any of the next chapters, whether it will be 10 or 3 chapters, I do not expect any of the next chapters to include doing a similar transaction on what you've did with the Netherlands, for instance, doing it the same thing with the UK, selling it or making it a strategic asset. Nor do I expect that Aegon will suddenly start appearing in India or any other country saying, now we start a business there. It will be different kind of transformations. Is that a correct assumption, or do we really have to wait until your Capital Markets Day?
I'm more than happy to discuss this further in London at our Capital Markets Day. One final point, we are already in India.
Okay, but it's a major market, no, it's a major...
No,
you understand, major
I'm
thing.
joking. It's the end of a long meeting, but I'm joking a little bit. But no, we hold your. It's a very good question. I understand where it's coming from. We aim to build over the longer term in a number of markets that we have chosen strong and advantaged businesses that are growing profitably and provide therefore the outlook for growing free cash flows and as a result growing returns.
Thank you.
Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I have the following question. So today you started with a very nice slogan, Lard, when you started your PowerPoint presentation, that it was something like, let's make life better for the people, right?
Helping people live their best lives.
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah, nice that you correct me, because I have to learn that slogan. But if that is what we want to do, and maybe we want to also restore things, is Aegon also having a plan out of their own initiative to restore investments which went wrong with people who trusted their investment with Aegon? Because there are examples in the industry, there are banks that went out of their own initiative, they came up with solutions. And what we see, for example, particularly in the Netherlands, in the United States is different, because there you have the SAC, which is a pretty good watchdog. But in the Netherlands, we have a mild watchdog. But can you maybe do something for the Dutch investors who have been impacted by products which were in the end, as the other colleagues here say, performing bad, or were actually total different products which they signed up for? So I think as Aegon, you should have the mindset to, in your own initiative, without that the people go into court and have to fight for a solution. I think Aegon should come up out of own initiative, come with solutions. I think that would be also good for your brand.
You want me to respond to this?
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you for your suggestion, but it's also something that we have done in many, many cases. So if I'm trying to find the number in my head, but if I look at the entire period of the years that we've been discussing concerns that customers had with products that they had sold in the past with us, we have really taken those complaints very seriously over the years. We've done a lot of work to engage with customers to try and find solutions for the issues that they had. In many cases, we were able to find those solutions. And that's good. Unfortunately, we could not find solutions in all cases, and in some cases, we simply disagree with our clients on the assessments that they make. And then, unfortunately, Mr. Retief, people then go to court, and then it goes through the legal system, and that takes a long time before that brings a resolution. But I would argue we are doing a lot every day to, first of all, have great product, great service. And then in those cases where customers have been disappointed with the product that they bought from us, we listen to their concerns, we try to remediate it, and for years we've done a lot of work to do so. And unfortunately, in some cases we disagree, and then in some cases that goes to court, but that is where we are. But in most of the cases we've been able to find the right resolutions.
I'm just talking about cases that are from 20 years ago. I believe maybe the products now have improved, but I think you should also find solutions for all-time customers still.
Okay,
Well,
that's,
yeah, well, we have. I mean, for instance, on the unit-linked file, we've invested more than $1 billion, for instance, over the years to make sure that we address the complaints of our customers. So we have been successful in many, many cases to do that. Some cases we disagree, and I don't have to repeat what I said earlier. But thank you for your suggestions.
okay,
Thank you very much.
good. Any other final question? Good, thank you. This almost concludes Aegon's annual general meeting of shareholders. Before I close this meeting, I would like to congratulate Ernst & Young accountants with their appointment. On behalf of the other members of the Supervisory Board, I would like to congratulate Dona Young with her reappointment to the Supervisory Board. Congratulations, Dona. I also would just like to add, for those who ask questions, that Dona Young received an award as one of the best performing directors in the United States by the Financial Times. So we're fortunate to have someone like Dona Young on our board. We look forward to continuing working with you. Since this meeting concludes Ben's last term as member of Aegon Supervisory Board, I would like to thank him for his valuable contribution over the past 8 years. Ben, also on behalf of the other Supervisory Board members, I would like to thank you for letting us use your extensive knowledge and insight. We will miss your collegiality and humor and your constructive challenging that we have on a regular basis from Ben. We wish you all the best in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes Aegon's 2022 Annual General Meeting of Shareholders. Before I close this meeting, I have a couple of announcements to make. Some drinks will be served outside this room in the hall, where we look forward to engaging with you in further conversations. If you have used a voting device from us, please make sure you return the device at the exit of this room. This also applies to the headsets if you have used one. On behalf of the Executive Board and the Supervisory Board, I would like to thank you very much for your continued support and your active participation prior and during this meeting. I look forward to seeing you again next year. I now close this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.